All right, well, we talked in the last video when I read the gospel we talked about Jesus being laughed at by people in his hometown. So what did Jesus' hometown look like? Well, it was a town like yours and mine. There were people and houses and camels. Oh, no, wait, we have cars. Just kidding. So some things were different, right, because of the time and because of the place where they lived. And one thing that was different was their churches didn't look inside like our churches. They looked more like Jewish synagogues look today because Jesus was a Jew. So here is, this is a picture of the Torah scroll. This is the kind of scroll that Jesus was reading from. They didn't have the Bible in books like this. They had parts of it, of the Old Testament, especially the Torah and the Pentateuch. So the Torah is the first 5 books of the Bible. The Pentateuch is the first 10 books of our Bible. And those were on these scrolls, and they were read by men in the temple. And now, sometimes they're read by women in the temple. They did not used to be read by women in the temple. So on our weekly today, that is why it's so cool if you turn to page 5 of your weekly, and you will see a picture. Page 5 looks like this, and there's this picture on it here. And this is of a girl reading from the Torah. And she's I think it's from the Torah. I'm not Jewish, so I can't say for sure. But this is at her bat mitzvah. Now, Jewish boys have a bar mitzvah, and Jewish girls have a bat mitzvah. So I want you to find out more about the Jews. And we are going to learn now about these things down here, which are from Jewish scripture tradition. And we're going to find out, I'm going to do this first one with you, where it says, a year of favor is a Jubilee year. Find and read about Israel's tradition at the Jubilee year in Leviticus 25, 8 through 17, and 25 through 28. So pulling out the Bible again, or you can go to the usccb.org website. Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, Acts, Old Testament, Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus. So Leviticus is the 3rd book of the Bible. That puts it in the, what do we call the first 5 books of the Bible? The Torah. And it's also in the Pentateuch, which is the first 10 books of the Bible. That's what Jewish scripture tradition called them. So we're going to Leviticus, and as you can see in my Bible here, it's right towards the front. We're going to Leviticus 25. And we're going to read verses 8 through 17. The Jubilee year. You shall count 7 weeks of years, 7 times 7 years, such that the 7 weeks of years amounts to 49 years. Then on the 10th day of the 7th month, let the ram's horn resound. On this, the Day of Atonement, the ram's horn blast shall resound throughout your land. You shall treat this 50th year as sacred. You shall proclaim liberty in the land for all its inhabitants. It shall be a jubilee for you, when each of you shall return to your own property, each of you to your own family. This 50th year is your year of jubilee. You shall not sow, nor shall you reap the aftergrowth, or pick the untrimmed vines. Since this is the Jubilee, it shall be sacred for you. You may only eat what the field yields of itself. In this year of Jubilee, then, each of you shall return to your own property. Therefore, when you sell any land to your neighbor or buy any from your neighbor, you do not deal unfairly with one another. On the basis of the number of years since the last Jubilee, you shall purchase the land from your neighbor. And so also, on the basis of the number of years of harvest, that person shall sell it to you. When the years are many, the price shall be so much the more. When the years are few, the price shall be so much the less. For it is really the number of harvests that the person sells to you. Do not deal unfairly with one another then, but stand in fear of your God. I, the Lord, am your God. And then it says also to read verses 25 through 28. So verse 25. When one of your kindred is reduced to poverty and has to sell some property, that person's closest relative who has the duty to redeem it shall come and redeem what the relative has sold. If, however, the person has no relative to redeem it, but later on acquires sufficient means to redeem it, the person shall calculate the years since the sale, return the balance to the one to whom it was sold, and thus regain the property. But if the person does not acquire sufficient means to buy back the land, what was sold shall remain in the possession of the purchaser until the year of the Jubilee, when it must be released and returned to the original owner. That was so much that my voice is scratchy. You want to know why? That's the book of the law. Leviticus has a lot of law in it from the Old Testament. And Jesus comes to free us. We still need to do the right things, but this bit about the year of the Jubilee is a year of being free from these kinds of debts that people had. Okay, so when they were talking in here about the Day of Atonement, on this 50th year, it says it shall be a jubilee, and they all go back to their property, to their own family, and they take a break. It says you shall not reap or sow the untrimmed vines. It's going to be sacred, and you're only just going to eat whatever comes off of the field right then. And then it says that if you buy or sell, you're supposed to do it fairly, okay? And when things are good, you can take more of a price. When they're not good, you can't just take from the people too much, okay? So God goes on to say that in verse 25, he says, when one of your kindred is reduced to poverty and has to sell some property, that person's closest relative has the duty to redeem it. It shall come and redeem what the relative has sold. So it's about trying to make up for other people's debts. And that's what Jesus does for us. Jesus comes and makes up for the sins that we did, for the parts of ourselves that we basically gave over to evil and didn't do the right things, that we sinned. Not just accidents, but also sins. So that's what Christ is about. That's what they're talking about here. So under this video, I tell you what to do on the rest of this page. And I think that I want you to have your parents pick one, and then you can do the one of the two that's left. So have your parents do one and look at that. And then I want you to pick which one of those two that's left that you want to do. And then I want you to discuss that with your parents. And put your answers in the boxes below, and I'll see you for the last video.